apology. I know you guys are busy probably with your forks and knives in hand. I'm not going to keep you too long away from your meal. But yeah, bon appetit. I don't have a presentation for today, so I'm just going to give sort of a discussion or just have a conversation with everyone on the floor. And thank you so much, Angeline. I think that was a great presentation. Really good. You made the work so much easier for me to follow, especially when it comes to Reliance. I'm not going to belabor the point, but Reliance is just a pathway to then now basically utilize or maximize resource efficiency and also be able to drive optimization within an organization, especially when it comes to regulatory affairs. Everyone wants to be original or kind of show their distinction or excellence, right? I mean, and also, especially when you're dealing with Africa, you have 55 member states, each with its own unique nuance, politics, demographics, intrinsic risks as well. So with all those muddled up together, and you're dealing with people, you have a lot of complexities. And you have to get a product within this regional economic bloc, right? We're all in East Africa. Guys want to set up business in Kenya to supply the region. But then you realize there are barriers to get to there. So Reliance is a pathway that's been recently introduced. Actually, I'm sorry, just like to correct, I'm not a doctor, so just for clarification purposes. Yeah. But being a scientist, I think I really appreciate just being able to move laterally in this space. So where do we start? When it comes to Reliance, we are seeing frontiers or actually initiatives that are enabling, rather opening up spaces for people within yourself, even not just for employment, but for capacitation. You have like the Pharmaceutical and MedTech, for example. They are championing Reliance for medical devices. There's been a lot of advancements. Just to give you some background, medical devices were being listed. What we're talking about continental listing, even you guys as pharmacists know the listing that was being done for products. So we were just doing listing from about 2015 onwards. The regulations were just requiring, the basics. Give me a manual or the instructions for use, give me quality documents, give me some labels, and we're good to go. But then now the advancement of therapies has really then now warranted the need for regulation, and also because of the risk to the patient. Medical devices are not just the devices that we see, let's say, in the hospital institutions when you're talking about an MRI. Even a thing, something as small as a bandage, something as small as a cotton gauze, those things are considered as medical devices, right? They're so simple, even the thermometers we use for checking temperature. So we just think of medical devices to be so basic or to be very rudimentary, but they can be very complex as well in their nature. Then now also you have things like software. So how do you look at software as a medical device? I remember one time I was making my rounds to the regulatory authority, and so to connect my story to the background, 2019, the regulator then comes up with guidelines for medical devices, right? And these are full-fledged guidelines. They're telling the industry we're implementing these. I think they launched them in the middle of the year. By December, they wanted everyone to have registered. So it's a whole new field, but then it's like, okay, where's the public participation? Where's the stakeholder engagement to even know how do we first register these products that we're just listing? These are products that are in the market. You tell us if we don't register and have compliance of that registration by end of the year, you're going to have your license revoked. So like Bernard was talking about how you get your ideas approved when you don't have evidence of approval, right? So the regulatory, they threw a spanner in the works, basically. So we had to quickly engage. As MEDAK as well, I think some things happened by serendipity. MEDAK was formed in April 2019, literally just when COVID broke out. And it's not that we rushed the process. We had been a consortium of players within the medical devices space. And the year prior, we were part of CAPI. CAPI was actually, but I think the challenge was representation. You have, even in the name, CAPI being mostly pharmaceutical, all the focus, all the issues are largely pharmaceutical driven. And also, as you talked about it, regulation catches up to practice. pharmaceutical players have been in the space for decades. Medical devices, this is a new thing. Yeah? When you even talk about medical devices, some people are like, what are those? If you tell someone like, this is a medical device, they'll be hardly surprised. Like, who knew here maggots actually are a medical device, considered a medical device? Yeah? God's design. But actually, it's all about the intended purpose. When some communities use them, because they're actually meant for dealing with rotting flesh. So actually, when you look at some treatments that are actually not able to deliver effective therapy outcome, some communities or some clinicians will actually refer to maggots to then deal with actually proper healing. So by design, God actually created the first medical device, so to speak. But there's a lot of advancements or just complexities evolving. When you even look at digital health, recently I found out that there's I think only 2 universities in the world right now that are driving standards or certification when it comes to digital health. So who is in these institutions? Where are they going? Are they getting involvement with the policymakers, like you said, at Davos? And I think it's a very important thing for this platform. I salute APM for indeed creating such a forum or a space for professionals, because when we started out in regulatory affairs, I mean, I was trying to tell people what I'm doing, and they're like, what is regulatory affairs? Are you a lawyer? What do you do? I'm like, it's really hard to, encapsulate what we do, or what regulatory affairs professionals are all about. But there's a whole pipeline. From what we do mostly is downstream. Whenever you want to get into the market, that's getting your licenses. Once you get clinical data in form of a dossier, you're going to the regulators to get that access. So that's a downstream regulatory professional. But upstream, you have the people who are actually doing the research, people in the R&D, people who are creating regulatory operations and systems. Most of the people who work in the organizations like the multinationals will know this. So you have a diverse supply chain or value chain that you can plug in. And then even when it comes to medical devices, the specialities are a bit different. Just as a commodity, a pharmaceutical commodity, you buy one, sell one most of the time. Yeah? If it's a 1 dose, 2 dose, 3 dose. But a medical device can come such as like a complex set of parts. Imagine a car. I can buy a car today, but it's got its tires, it's got its filters, it's got all these other components, right? So with all those, you're looking at so many more suppliers. You're looking at who's the operator. Some, like a bandage, I don't need to tell you how to use a bandage. But if I was to tell you you need to go for robotic surgery, then there's a whole ecosystem of infrastructure that needs to be supported with that. So when it comes to digital health, what are the barriers when it comes to Reliance? You'll have challenges like what are the competencies we have even within the regulatory space, within industry and within the regulators? Do we have people who are actually able to educate the regulator? Again, no one has a monopoly on science. One thing I've learned, and one thing you'll appreciate, is regulatory affairs is a humbling experience. Yeah? Even for the regulator will know, we don't know everything, by the way. What is this thing you're showing us? Sometimes actually and I think that's where a concept of Reliance is all about trust. Yeah? When we're talking about Reliance, I'm relying on something, a review you've done. Yeah? You've assessed something, you've given me the outcomes of it in a form of a report. And because I've engaged you on a relationship, or because you have certain expertise, I'm meant to then now take the basis of those outcomes and implement it for my operations. So how do we build that trust? It's all about transparency. Yeah? You can only, like in the olden days, people wonder why when you're shaking out your hand, you reach it out. Yeah? Most of the time, or even in some communities, your other hand has to be present. Because people used to always hide something behind their back. And trust comes by knowing I can see through you. So a lot of the time, when you're talking about regulators who want to collaborate, the regulators first have to respond to the need. First, it comes with humility as well, knowing that they don't have all the capacities. And also a lot of the time, governments are not giving the necessary funding. When it comes to resource allocation, even autonomy, they can get the money, but do they have autonomy to use it as they wish? That's also one thing. And also when it comes to resources, when you come to setting up an agency for regulations, most of them have been set up, especially in Africa, for pharmaceutical practices. So faculties and departments need to be reconstituted when you're talking about medical devices. Now you need biomedical engineers. You need testing facilities like the National Quality Control Lab, yeah? And even they don't have the expertise to test everything, yeah? Both from a finance perspective and even from an expertise perspective. So when it comes to Reliance, trust is one thing. So for example, the Pharmacy Postage Board just entered an agreement, confidentiality agreement with the US FDA. So such partnerships like that allow for collaboration. The moment that they have that MOU, now it means that they can disclose certain information without having to redact. They have NDAs that are signed behind that. And also at the same time, you also have to understand these regulators are holding other companies' proprietary information. Yeah, it's not like they're just given the information and they have the wherewithal to do what they want. So you'll realize even as companies, when you're getting to Reliance, we all have spaces to play. We have to collaborate. When PPP is going to rely on my dossier, or rather the US FDA has reviewed one of our products, we don't want it to go through the whole evaluation. I need to give consent to the regulator that PPP is relying on, that you can share my information. So we also need to understand the global space we work with in terms of the GDPR rules in Europe. But also at the same time, there's issues or barriers that beyond the technical spaces of, let's say, systems, we have things like interoperability. Can systems speak to one another? For example, if the systems that they're having in the US FDA, and they want to do certain Reliance pathways, do we have similar systems that are aligned for efficiency? So with that, I'm just going to also then share also another aspect in which beyond Reliance that the PPP is championing, or just a regulator that we identify with is championing. MDSAP, and someone was talking about GMP earlier on. So GMP, we all know, is for pharmaceuticals, good manufacturing practice. Medical devices fall under a different standard, which is called the ISO 13485. So basically, this is the global standard that defines your medical device, you as a medical device manufacturer, have the right quality management systems. So imagine medical devices as well are rapidly advancing. By the time you have this product launched, like an iPhone, you already know 9 months down the road there's another one coming. Medical devices are sometimes even faster. So by the time you're already filing your dossier, the competitors are probably already innovated and come up with another competitor to your innovation, and now you need to really deploy a new application. How do you do that? So especially when it comes to audits of medical device manufacturers. So PPP, for example, now has entered the MDSAP program. So what that means is PPP is recognized as an affiliate member to the Medical Device Single Audit Program. So this means resource efficiencies are being utilized. So PPP doesn't have to go through audits for a manufacturing supplier who has already been audited, let's say by the US FDA, by Brazil, by Australia, by Japan, by Canada. So what this means for you, and even for us locally, is local manufacturers, the fact that we have the PPP part of that program, PPP can come and audit your facility as a local manufacturer, and then if they're satisfied, they conduct an MDSAP audit. They'll come with the Australian counterparts, the Japanese counterparts, They perform an audit, and if they certify you, then you as a local entity get the MDSAP, you can now export to these stringent regulatory authorities. So now with that, it's actually giving you a bigger access to the export market. So some of these initiatives come through engagement. Again, PPP realized that it's also a mandate from the African Union. And I'll go back also to what you're talking about in terms of marriage. Yeah, to take a level, it's in terms of, the EU, you know about the EU's laws. EU was formulated on the same framework that the AU was, right? The AU of the 1969. But that collapsed because of our politics. But if you look at the EU now and their framework, has been able to birth what they call the MDD, the Medical Device Directive. That was a regulation since 1990, 1992, I think, that was enabling medical device suppliers of products to access the whole EU market. Now, they came up with an MDR, which is the Medical Device Regulation. So they have revised that regulation because there was a lot of advancements again since 1992. They reassessed and they saw that there was need for reframing things. So when you look at that, I mean, these guys have leveraged our framework to implement a Reliance pathway that's working for them in one economic block. So it comes to what we need to do as Africans. We need to reflect, we need to reassess our needs, and we need to also be honest. Having honest discussions, honest reflections. We need to, for us to really make this operational, we need to marry our politics or marry our interests. Beyond just marrying our economies or trading blocks, we can't just do a half-mile measure towards reliance. So as they say in marriage, if your money is not married, you're really not married. Yeah. So for our country or in Africa, maybe that's a bit controversial for some people in the room. So maybe we can have a side chat about that. But when it comes to reliance in Africa, we maybe need to look at our politics. So for regulatory professionals like yourselves, some people, I'll tell you, like regulatory affairs, when you get in, a lot of the time you're a paper pusher. You're just at the back doing dossiers, you're learning how to understand contents, table of contents, the structure of a dossier, and having to file correspondences, receive correspondences with the regulator. But then when you move or build those capacities, then now you can move into from technical to a bit strategic work. So with strategic work, there's opportunities for advocacy, policy shaping. Again, when it comes to position papers, when there's new guidelines, you also need to plug in. So you're reading widely and you're connecting what's happening with your local market and the international space. So what I'll say is, as a regulatory professional, there's something called the autodidactic. You need to know how to learn and teach yourself. Autodidactic. You need to learn how to teach. A lot of the times, no one's going to come and say, here you go. Yeah? You need to learn how to be resourceful. So knowing how to ask the right questions, knowing again how to build and map your network. Who are your stakeholders? Because your stakeholders will change depending on what you're trying to achieve. So what I'll say is network, collaborate, be honest about what you don't know. There's no such thing as a dumb question. I'd say it's better to be a fool for 1 minute and ask a question than to remain a fool, not having asked anything. So just be humble and also asking a question, asking for support, look for mentorship. I'll tell you there's a great latitude of space when it comes to digital health, programming, digital security. For medical devices, like when I tell you Internet of Things, a lot of, like some of these things are so abstract, but like when you walk into a hospital and when you have an Internet of Things or IoT setup, if you have a medical device and you have not taken your dosage, or it prints that your therapy dosage is falling low beyond the alert, it can actually be able to connect to the infrastructure that you're walked into, right? Like if you're in a hospital setting, there's a clinician programmer somewhere, your device can be able to communicate to your HCP and let them know that, hey, my patient is actually not taking his dosage. So things like those also help, adhering to your regimen, being able to do patient remote monitoring. I mean, when you also come to digital health and security, you have guys who, also not just the pharmacy regulator, there's also things like radioactive materials. You've also got things like radio frequency. When we talk of Bluetooth-enabled devices or technology, a lot of the smart medical devices are using Bluetooth or radio frequencies. So even when it comes to radio frequencies, who's the regulator for that? You see, it's communication authority. So you need to also think with a different type of mindset. I'm not just dealing with one regulator when I'm in this space. I could be dealing with multiple. You're dealing with anti-counterfeit authority. You're dealing with KRA when it comes to HSOs. Because also now you need to advocate. If the new health bill comes out and they want to now levy taxes on your devices, what are you going to do? That's a regulatory affairs component. So we need to build capacity. We need to also be experts. Also just to know sometimes that you'll not get all the answers in one formula, as you said. You need to then now think more broadly. And this is more advice for me as much as it is for you as well. We are practicing in just the same way they say doctors are practicing. Regulatory affairs is a practice. You never perfect it. You keep learning, you keep building yourself up, but at the same time, you need to also then leverage and engage. So COVID taught us that really as Africans, we have all the solutions. There's a big momentum on the continent, given that we learned that we need African solutions for African people. Yep. So there's political goodwill at the African continent level. We're very fortunate because here in Kenya, the head of the medical devices agency also chairs another capacity at the African level. She's the chair of the African Medical Devices Regulatory Forum. So guys, if you want opportunities, there's no better time than now. Yeah? Both professionally in industry and even in government. Just plug in, get to network, and who knows what tomorrow holds. I'll share some other maybe views as we mingle, but I just wanted to give a different angle from what Angeline shared. I think it was really good. And for me, it's more conversational. I'll be happy to engage with you guys as we go along. And enjoy your meals and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.